Welcome to the CEDH Summer Slam, presented by Mayhem Comics and Collectibles. For this week, we're making the final game of the Summer Slam worth double points. Everyone's back in and has a chance. No, I didn't do this because Cringecopters couldn't win, I promise. With that being said, let's check out the pod today. First, we have Pilch on Windgrace lands, a Jund list that seeks to land Windgrace, generate card advantage, and win with combo or land-based beatdown. Josh on Zevlor 3-for-1, a Grixis list that seeks to use Zevlor's ability to get massive value out of already powerful cards. Kalen on Lathril Elf Ball, a tribal deck that seeks to spam elves and roll its way to victory. And finally, Evan on Rafiq Infect, a Voltron deck that seeks to use its commander combined with combat tricks to kill its opponents through Infect. And now, with each pilot in their respective corner of the screen, let's continue the CEDH Summer Slam. And for those of you in the Ames area, stick around to find out how you can get 10% off your next Mayhem Ames purchase. Pilch draws and plays a Command Tower, Mana Crypt, and a Mox Diamond, discarding a land as it enters. He casts a turn 1 Nether Void. The rest of the table yell in agony, and Pilch passes. Josh draws, plays a Watery Grave tapped, and passes. Kalen draws, plays a Marsh Flats, and also passes. Evan draws, plays an Ancient Tomb, and passes. Oh boy. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch wins his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws and plays a Badlands, Blinded by the Sun, and passes. Josh draws and puts a Blood Crypt into play tapped. At the end of Josh's turn, Kalen cracks Marsh Flats, paying a life and fetching up a Bayou onto the battlefield. The turn moves to Kalen. Kalen draws, puts an Overgrown Tomb into play tapped, and passes. Evan draws, plays a Rejuvenating Springs, and plays a Mox Diamond, discarding a land as it enters. Evan passes. Pilch draws, plays a Polluted Delta, and passes. Josh draws, plays an island, plays a Chrome Mox, imprinting Fierce Guardianship, and passes. Kalen draws, plays a Homeward Path, plays a Jeweled Lotus, and passes. Evan draws, plays a Centaur Garden, and casts Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. Evan passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch wins his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws, puts a Field of the Dead into play tapped, and passes. Josh draws, plays a Jeweled Lotus, and passes. Kalen draws, plays a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, and casts Toski, Bearer of Secrets. Kalen passes. Evan draws, plays an Access Tunnel, and plays a Llanowar Elves. At the end of Evan's turn, Pilch cracks his Polluted Delta, paying a life and fetching up a Bayou onto the battlefield. The turn moves to Pilch. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch wins his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws, plays a City of Brass, and casts his commander, Lord Windgrace. He upticks Windgrace, discarding a land card to draw 2 cards, and passes. Josh draws and casts his commander, Zevlor, Lathril Exile. He moves to combat and attacks Pilch with Zevlor. Pilch takes the hit, and Josh passes. Kalen draws and immediately moves to combat, attacking Pilch with Toski. Pilch takes the hit, and Kalen draws through Toski. In his second main phase, Kalen casts his commander, Lathril, Blade of the Elves, and passes. Evan draws, casts his commander, Rafiq of the Many, and passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch wins his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws, plays a Mazavith, and casts Realms Uncharted, targeting Evan, fetching up a Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, and Boseiju, who shelters all. Evan gives Pilch Tabernacle and Thespian Stage, and the rest go to Pilch's graveyard. Pilch downticks Windgrace, returning Boseiju and Dark Depths to the battlefield, creating 2 zombies through Field of the Dead. Pilch passes. Josh draws, and passes. Kalen draws and plays Quirion Ranger. He moves to combat and attacks Josh with Lathril and Toski. Josh blocks Toski with Zevlor, takes the rest, Kalen creates 2 elf tokens through Lathril, draws through Toski, and passes. Evan draws, plays a Tundra, and moves to combat, attacking Pilch with Rafiq, getting +1/+1 through Exalted. Pilch takes the hit, and Evan passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch wins his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws and plays Thespian Stage, creating a zombie through field, and downticks Windgrace, returning Gaia's Cradle and Polluted Delta to the battlefield, creating 2 zombies through field. He casts Demonic Tutor, fetching a card into his hand, and moves to combat, attacking Josh with 3 zombies. Josh takes the hit, and Pilch passes. Josh draws, plays a Gemstone Caverns, and casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, creates 4 treasure tokens, and Josh passes. Kalen draws and plays an Allosaurus Shepherd. He follows it up with an Elvish Archdruid. In response, Pilch casts Deadly Rollick, exiling Allosaurus Shepherd. Archdruid is countered by Nether Void, and Kalen moves to combat, attacking Evan with Toski, Lathril, and the elf tokens. Evan takes the hit, Kalen draws 4 through Toski, and creates 2 elf tokens through Lathril. In his second main phase, Kalen plays a Gaia's Cradle, casts a Priest of Titania, and passes. Evan draws and plays Steel of the Godhead, enchanting Rafiq. He moves to combat and attacks Pilch with Rafiq. For 4 damage, Pilch activates Mazavith, untapping and removing Rafiq from combat. At the end of Evan's turn, Pilch activates Thespian Stage, making it a copy of Dark Depths. Dark Depths is destroyed by the Legend rule, Thespian Stage is sacrificed, Pilch creates a Merit Lage token and cracks his Polluted Delta, paying a life, fetching up a Blood Crypt onto the battlefield tapped, and creating a zombie through field. The turn moves to Pilch. At the beginning of his upkeep, Pilch loses his Mana Crypt trigger. He draws and plays a Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, creating a zombie through field. He casts Fire Covenant, paying 12 life, targeting Quirion Ranger, Priest of Titania, the 4 Elf tokens, and Rafiq. In response, Evan casts Fierce Guardianship, countering Fire Covenant. Plans foiled, Pilch moves to combat, attacking Evan with Merit Lage and 6 zombie tokens. Evan blocks with Rafiq, and dies. In his second main phase, Pilch casts Rurik Thar, the Unbowed, and passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Josh pays for Zevlor and sacrifices Dockside through Tabernacle. He draws and casts Brainstorm, taking 6 damage through Rurik Thar. He draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. He plays an Ancient Tomb and passes. At the beginning of his upkeep, Kalen pays for his creatures through Tabernacle. He draws, floats mana with Priest, and activates Quirion Ranger, bouncing Gaia's Cradle to his hand to untap Priest. He replays Gaia's Cradle and casts Green Sun Zenith, where X equals 8. In response, Josh flashes in an Opposition Agent. Agent resolves, and still in response, Kalen casts Assassin's Trophy, destroying Agent. Zenith resolves, and Kalen fetches up a Craterhoof Behemoth onto the battlefield. It enters and gives all of Kalen's creatures +9/+9 and trample. With death by combat all but certain, the table sees the writing on the wall, and Kalen wins the game. For those of you in the Ames area who stuck around, come to Mayhem Comics and Ames this week and ask for the YouTube discount. You'll be asked the question, who won? Answer correctly and get 10% off your purchase.
Oh, we dabbed on those haters by just casting a Tournament Nether Void, and then they all got a little upset.
So how'd the game go, Josh?
Oh, it went splendid. Turn 1 Nether Void. Couldn't cast spells. I had turn 1 Commander, but it didn't matter. And it was just a slow game.
You won.
I did win. It went weird, I guess would be the word. Pilch played a turn 1 Nether Void, which really slowed down. I had a turn 1 Commander if that didn't happen. However, what ended up happening is that slowed down pretty much everyone. Pilch didn't really get a chance to like extort that advantage, I guess, and I ended up just generating enough mana to kill them with Craterhoof Behemoth.
Well, turn 1 Nether Void was a little rough, but like, I top decked Ancient Tomb to start off the game, and I was able to get like mana underneath me a little bit, and I was able to get Rafiq out and start beating a little bit. And then, I mean, like, I kind of got stuck between a rock and a hard place. I either could make Rafiq big enough to block and live, or I could counter the spell that killed Rafiq. There was just no way for me to like actually survive from it.
All right, finishing out the Summer Slam, the Cringe Copters just weren't able to snag wins and ended last at 140 points. Viva la Revolucion had a win but couldn't stitch enough together and end in third with 150. Harmless Offerings had a very strong start but felt the first place envy and get knocked out in the final round down to second at 200 points. With that being said, your winner for the 2022 CEDH Summer Slam is Fish Feeders at 260 points. Despite having no blue, they proved you don't need Thassa's Oracle to pull out wins in CEDH. Congratulations to both Kalen and Tanner for their hard-earned win. What was your favorite moment of the Summer Slam? What was your favorite deck? Who was your favorite player? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in, and this concludes the CEDH Summer Slam.